Good morning, Dr. Saranya. Thank you for agreeing to talk to JDF. I understand you're director of the STEMS, the cord blood banking in Chennai. Could you tell something about cord blood banking in Chennai, India as a whole, and how you have been able to put all this into place?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to talk to JDF, and we actually got into this field of cord blood banking way back in 2007, and it took us about a year to actually set things up and get all our SOPs and everything. And actually by the time it started, it was 2008 when we were fully operational, and we had our ISO certification in 2008. And we got our licensing, all of that was done, and we were ready to go in 2008. Since then, we've been collecting samples, and basically what cord blood banking is all about is because cord blood is an amazingly rich source of stem cells. And this was identified more recently, maybe just around 1985 or so, until which time it was being thrashed. Unfortunately, in India, it has kind of caught up more recently, after the start of the 21st century, and these stem cells in the cord blood, which are still being thrown away, if one were to quantify it in terms of the number of births we have each day, it is just something phenomenal that is being wasted. And to think that this precious resource can actually save somebody's life, and we are needlessly wasting it. So this is why we got into it. And India has a huge disease burden of thalassemia. Almost about 10,000 children are born every year with this disease, which is a genetic disease. And again, we have a lot of people who have relapses from leukemias or blood cancers of various kinds. And for all of these people who have actually had chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and who have no other option, this is the only thing that can actually save their lives. So when we have such a huge disease burden on one hand of people who can be helped with stem cells, we have the stem cells in plenty through all the deliveries that are happening every day. We have about 1 lakh deliveries happening in India every day, and that is the reported figure. Probably unreported would be a lot more. So, I mean, it seems like you have poverty in the midst of plenty when you have the stem cells but you don't have treatments available. So, and they're not being banked, they're just being wasted. So, with this as the background, we got into cord blood banking, and our initial steps were slow because we didn't have the funding for processing a donated sample. But now it's been going on, and now 8 years down the line, we've collected close to about 10,000 samples, or maybe a little more, of which we have very stringent criteria based on which we actually accept the samples, and roughly about 49 to 50% of these collected samples have been stored, and they're all preserved at minus 196 degrees centigrade in the vapor phase of liquid nitrogen, where they remain dormant until actually being put to use for some transplant. Now, in the last few years, we've had 5 transplants. 2 of them are for thalassemics, and a couple of them for immune system disorders, and 1 for a malignancy. And I'm very happy to say that 4 out of these 5 children are doing well. 2 of them are cured of their illness already because they happened a little earlier. And out of the other 3 that happened earlier this year, in February and March this year, I think 1 of them we don't know about, the other 2 seem to be progressing okay. Too soon to say, but things are looking up, and I think that once our numbers increase, we are going to definitely see more stem cell transplants. The need for actually having a cord blood bank in every country is very imperative, because the stem cell matching is done based on what are called the HLA proteins, which are found on the surface of these stem cells. And these proteins are ethnicity dependent, which means an Indian has a greater likelihood of finding a match within an Indian environment.
Yes, Dr. Saranya, you were talking about ethnicity and HLA.
Yeah, it's very important that every country has its own units banked in a repository, because the HLA proteins, which is the basis on which these stem cells are matched between a donor and recipient, HLA standing for human leukocyte antigen. These are proteins present on the surface of the stem cell, and these are very ethnicity dependent. So which means that an Indian has a greater likelihood of finding a match within an Indian inventory as compared to a Caucasian one. So the likelihood of finding a match in a Caucasian inventory is something like about 1 in 16 persons would be actually able to identify a match, as against 1 in 2 if they were to look within an Indian inventory.
So with now an international diaspora, do you have requests from other countries?
Yes,
or,
we have requests from all over. In fact, yesterday we found one from Australia and another one from Armenia the day before that. We're getting a few from Pakistan, because I think in the Caucasian inventories, which are the largest in the world, the Indian representation or even the Asian representation is very low. And right now we can happily say that we have the largest inventory of Indian samples in the SAARC region. So people are looking towards us, and on an average we receive something like about 2 to 3 requests for HLA matching each day. And I think once our numbers crossed around 3,000 samples that were actually stored, our matches have improved. And I think this is going to improve further and further. We are working towards having an inventory of about 30,000 to 50,000 units. And I know that right now we are at 5,000, so we have a long way to go, but I think if we get more and more obstetricians on board who are truly committed to cord blood donation, I don't think this is going to be difficult at all. And I think we are getting there, because we have been talking to people all over the country, and we have collected samples from most of the parts of the country, barring probably the areas we don't want to go to, like the Northeast or Kashmir, but most of the other places we have received samples from.
So you have an ethnic diversity within India.
It is very important. It is very important, because India is like 28 different countries put together. So we need to have the antigenic diversity of all populations if we really need to have a meaningful inventory that's going to help Indians all across the world. And it's just sheer luck if you're able to identify a match for somebody else within our inventory. But yes, for Indians, most certainly this is the answer. And we are hoping that every mother thinks about cord blood donation, because, you know, let her child begin life giving somebody else a chance to live.
So that's a fundamental difference between a public cord blood banking and a private cord.
Yes. In private banking, it's just the reverse. A family decides that they will possibly need it in the future. They are willing to pay for it and store it only for their own future use. And unfortunately, the private bankers world over have gone hammer and tongs marketing this, to the extent that parents actually feel a little guilty if they don't bank their baby's cord blood. But having said that, if there is any one flip side of cord blood, it is that the number of stem cells is small. So it is ideal for a person of under 40 kilos of weight. So that is why the pediatric population are the ones who actually benefit. And if you were to treat an adult who is over 40 kilos, maybe you would need to have 2 cord blood units or an expanded unit. Expansion of stem cells, which is multiplication of stem cells in the laboratory, is not yet an approved procedure. It is still in the research phase. And there are several protocols that different workers have used, but there isn't one formula for expansion as of now. So if you're going to go to a private bank and decide that you want to store your baby's cord blood for your own future use, the likelihood of using that is something like 1 in 200 to 1 in 50,000 or so. But people still want to pay for it and store it because they're frightened and because the potential of stem cells is large. Now, how we work at Jeevan is for people who are, despite all the clear evidence in favor of public donation of cord blood, if they still want to go ahead with private, they are welcome to, there's no problem. We are only looking at the remaining 98% of women, antenatal mothers, who instead of allowing that very precious resource to be trashed, do decide to take a conscious decision to donate that cord blood and give somebody a chance of a life. That's what we are working towards. And we have tied up with several hospitals, as I mentioned. we don't expect them to start overnight. We do a lot of training, we do a lot of hand-holding, training in terms of what they need to tell their families, what they need, how they need to collect the sample, the kind of samples we require, and the transport requirements. All of this is clearly explained to them, and we actually go and demonstrate how cord blood is actually collected. We occasionally even send, if it's somebody in Chennai itself, we send somebody to actually collect it and demonstrate the collection process to them a couple of times, and then they are on their own. And anytime they have any doubts, they are welcome to kind of write
So it
to
is
us.
the institution as such who do the deliveries, who have to get into the system so that the cord blood banking becomes complete as a whole.
Absolutely. Because I think we need like there are a couple of institutions across the country which have made this a norm. They kind of support cord blood donation, and that's the only way really that it works, because if every mother is given an option of doing this, in certain countries like Singapore, when you go there, they even have these hoardings on the back of buses in malls. So that's the way the message has gone across. So I think we need to have that, and we need a lot of youngsters to kind of start this at the start of their practice itself, talk about this, because this is something that unless you start from the very beginning of your practice, realize the importance of stem cell donation and the usefulness of it, I think it will go a long way if they do that.
So in India, how many public cord blood banks are there, and what would be your projected requirements, say, in about 10 years' time?
Right now, we are the only fully operational public cord blood bank in the country. There are a couple of others who also say they are doing public banking, but when we have asked some of our people who have asked us about donation of cord blood to go to them, they have come back to us because it's not operational for some reason. So we are the only fully operational public cord blood bank in the country as of now. And as to what our requirement would be, I think definitely we need to reach that magic figure of 30,000 within the next 5 years. If we need to take care of the requirements of Indians alone, we definitely need 30,000. Anything over and above that is only going to give us a better and better match. Or possibly instead of finding 2 units which are a 10 by 10 match, maybe we'd have 7 units with a 10 by 10 match. So I think 30,000 is the magic figure that we are working towards. And I think a few more good institutions, if they were to join us shortly, I think then we could do this. But the answer is not having several cord blood banks opening up, because I think it's superfluous having too many centers opening up all across the country, because like in any part of the other parts of the world, they have maybe, for a country like US, they may be having 2 or 3, where units from all over the country are collected and actually go there for processing, because processing is expensive. So it makes sense if there is a central processing facility which can handle samples from all across. You're just going to scale up operations once you have it in place, which is what I think we need to work towards.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Saranya, for talking to JDF. In case anybody wants to contact you in starting a cord blood sample collection, they can get in touch with you and go to your website.
Absolutely.
And to see your slides and
Thank
other
you so
things
much.
online. Thank you very much.